Lawyers, what was the most desperate thing the opposing lawyer did to win a losing case? I worked a case where the opposing lawyer seemed to keep losing or not receiving certain pieces of evidence. We had to continually resend paperwork to his office. When the court date finally came around, I received a call from the other lawyer stating that he was missing a crucial piece of evidence. I told him that I would bring it to the courthouse and give it to him there. He tried to push me to just email it to him. I refused and said I would give it to him at the courthouse. He relented and said he would meet me in the lobby. I got to the lobby and saw him waiting. I walked over and gave him the paperwork that he needed. I walked away, but something told me to turn around. I turned around just in time to watch this man crumple up the paper and eat it. He stuck the paper into his mouth, chewed, and then swallowed it. I was dumbfounded. I just went to my assigned courtroom and waited to see how this would pan out. The guy tried to block our evidence, stating that he had not been notified and was unable to fact check it. I asked the judge for a moment and told her what I had seen and told her all the problems we had been having with this guy. I even pulled up my email to show her how many times I sent the same paperwork to him. He lost the case and I filed a complaint. In my city there is a lawyer that is known to be used by the local gang. He is often pulling their butts from the fire. I was tasked with charging a gang member with some misdemeanor charge. I had a meeting with the lawyer in my office. As he was leaving, he gave a vague warning that I should just drop the charge. I politely said that I was just doing as I was told and couldn't drop the charge without my boss saying so. He left quietly. A few days later, I come into my office and there is a box sitting on my desk. I don't think anything of it and open it. After I settle in, I pulled the lid off the box and inside is a snake. It's clearly pissed off and writhing around. I just sit back and kinda chuckle. I knew this was an intimidation attempt. I'm a woman, so obviously I must be terrified of snakes. It wasn't even venomous. It was a smaller boa constrictor. I just waited for the snake to calm down and carefully pulled it from the box. He was a cute little thing. I would have kept him, but I didn't have room for another terrarium. Besides, I don't think he would have gotten along with my 2 ball pythons I already owned. I ended up calling animal control and asking if I could bring him there. He ended up in a good home. I have a weird one. I was working a case where a man was suing another man for medical expenses. To give as brief a description possible, they were intimate with one another and one party sustained damage due to the size of the other man's genitals. My client was the injured party. It was a strange case to work on. We shortly found out that our judge was a gay man. It's important, I promise. And that's when things began to spiral out of hand. I found out from the judge that the other lawyer had tried to bribe him, and not with money. The other lawyer had offered to let the judge perform fellatio on his client. You know, the one who was being sued for injuring someone with his genitals. The judge was not amused with the attempted bribery. He had some words with the lawyer and his client. He ruled in favor of my client. The other lawyer lost his license over this dumb case. I was working this one case. It was fairly cut and dry. I was charging a guy with destruction of public property and all the evidence pointed to him. The guy had broken several things at his local park. The other lawyer was an older gentleman. He was known for getting people out of trouble through technicalities and loopholes. I worked very hard to make sure my case was airtight. I had everything lined up ready to go. I go in for court and we get to opening statements. I've just finished when the other lawyer grips his chest and falls to the floor. Everyone was in panic and someone started CPR. Thankfully, there was an ambulance nearby. He was carted off to the hospital quickly. We dismissed for the time being, and I waited to hear when we would be returning. I got a phone call a couple days later. The old man had faked a heart attack to postpone the hearing. I was shocked to say the least. Apparently, the old guy was retiring soon and didn't want the loss on his record. The client was given a different lawyer and still lost. This is my time to shine. I've had 2 instances where the other lawyer did something outlandish to try and win. The first story is from early in my career. I was working on a case that dealt with possession of marijuana. A young man was caught selling to someone in a car. The other lawyer decided to argue that it wasn't marijuana and was in fact some sort of dried herb. He argued hard and decided to bring in a small baggie of weed and a small baggie of oregano, I think. He was going to pass both bags around the jury to prove how hard it is to distinguish the two. He got in serious trouble for having marijuana, especially because he had to have bought it illegally to have it. It was one of the dumbest moves I had ever seen. The second story is more scary than funny. I was working a domestic violence case. The husband had been beating his wife for years and it all came to a head when he locked her in the house with their 2 children for almost 2 weeks. They weren't allowed to leave for work or school or groceries. Thankfully, one of the woman's coworkers knew something was up and called the cops. We are sitting in the courtroom and the other lawyer was making his opening statement. All of a sudden I'm hit from behind. I fell out of my seat. Next thing I know the husband is on top of me punching me wherever he can reach. He is quickly pulled off of me and taken into the holding cell. I was bleeding and was taken to the hospital. I had to get a couple stitches. My boss comes in shortly after and tells me that the other lawyer was taken off the case. In the aftermath of the attack, the husband had said something to the lawyer that made it seem like it had been the lawyer's idea to attack me. It was never proven as there was no real evidence, and it was one guy's word against another's. In the end the guy went to jail for abusing his wife and attacking me. I'm a female lawyer, which is important, and I was working a case where a woman was suing her workplace for harassment and discrimination. I worked 4 weeks to prepare for the trial. We pick out our jurors and are set to go ahead with the trial. The morning of the trial, I receive a call asking me to come in earlier. I made my way to the courthouse and met with the judge and other lawyer. I was told that the other lawyer had filed for a mistrial. I, of course, ask on what grounds. The answer I was given will baffle me for years to come. This man looked me in the eyes and said, "There are too many women on the jury." I stood there in shock for a moment. I asked him to explain. He explains that his client is to be judged by a jury of his peers, and, with so many women on the jury, it didn't appear to be a group of his peers. I argued back that the lawyer had been there when we picked out jury members and that, if that was a problem, he should have brought it up then. I then asked why women weren't considered his client's peers. The room was silent after that. The judge denied the mistrial, and I won my case. Yay for workplace misogyny. I was working a case that involved someone that was involved in a gang. He was caught assaulting a person, and then drugs were found in his car. It was a high tension case. I did my opening statement. When I came back to my table, there was a photo of my daughter at her school waiting for me. I looked over at the other lawyer and saw a slight smirk on his face. I texted my wife and told her to go get our daughter. I asked my brother to go and sit with them until I got home. He was ex-military and I knew they would be safe with him. We took a recess soon after and I called my wife. She had already gotten our daughter and was back home. My brother had been there waiting when she got back. They were safe. I went immediately to the judge and let him know that my family had been threatened. The other lawyer had threatened my family in the courtroom. In the end, he still lost the case and his client went to jail. Me and my family moved soon after. I didn't feel safe there afterwards. I had to deal with several attempts to save a losing case. In one case, the other lawyer's client, James, was caught on camera robbing 3 different convenience stores. His face was caught on film and all 3 cashiers were there to testify. The guy was going to lose. The lawyer came to my office one day and tried to bribe me. He wanted to pay me $2,000 to lose some of the evidence. I said no. He then tried to threaten me. I pulled my jacket back and showed him the pistol on my hip. He left in a hurry. I get a call from one of my witnesses saying that the other lawyer called and wants to meet with them. I told them to call him back and say that they can meet at my office. To no one's surprise, he backed out. He showed up to another witness's house and tried to scare him into not testifying. That backfired spectacularly. The idiot even tried to bribe and threaten the judge. As the court date got closer, he became more desperate and started going after jury members. No one paid him any mind. He wasn't a very intimidating man. In the end, He still lost the case and several people filed a complaint against him. I've been working as a lawyer in a rough area for about 20 years now, and here are just some of the things I've had to deal with. Another lawyer threatened to beat me up in open court. I've had more than one gun waved in my face. Threats to my non-existent children. Threats to my non-existent spouse. Cussed out in open court. Attempted bribery. I've been told my car was going to be tampered with. My car has been tampered with. My house has been broken into. My mother has been called and threatened. She told them to try it and hung up. My house and car have been vandalized. People have sat outside my house and watched me. Overall, it's been a wild ride. I think I'm going to move out of the country when all is said and done. I was the lawyer who did something crazy, not as crazy as some of the other stories here, to try and win a case. I never did much criminal defense, but a man, who we'll call Lawrence, came into my office with a driving while intoxicated charge and an aggravated unlicensed operation of motor vehicle charge, both misdemeanors. Lawrence swore up and down that he does not drink and was not intoxicated, he never drove the vehicle, and that he has a valid driver's license. I give Lawrence the names of some local criminal defense and attorneys and suggest he try them out. Lawrence refuses, saying I'm the lawyer he wants. In hindsight, I should have realized that he probably had already gone to these other attorneys and only came to me after they refused to take his case. I charge the guy $200 for an intake and record review fee and contact the local court, police station, and district attorney's office for information and paperwork. I find out that not only did this guy blow a 18 on the breathalyzer, but the cops did a blood test on him after he kept insisting he wasn't drunk. The blood test came back with a 22 back. As for driving, the separate squad cars witnessed Lawrence's vehicle run over a mailbox and drive off. He was followed and pulled over on the block. Per the police report, Lawrence was the only person in the car and was in the driver's seat with a seatbelt on. Oh. And I tracked down his license through the DMV, and it had expired 3 years ago and was suspended for 2 years prior to that. He gives me the excuse that his son must have put Fireball whiskey in his green tea and he didn't realize there was whiskey in his green tea because he was eating red hot cinnamon candies and had a cold/stuffy nose. So that's what I ran with. I tried to argue it and brought the son in to question him. It was a dumb case and I lost, but I shouldn't have taken it to begin with.